Alright, so I'm sure you've already read the title, but I still want to say that this video is kind of designed for new intermediate players who have gotten a grasp on the game, but haven't been around long enough to know all these mechanics. They don't necessarily come up all the time because they don't start in the game, but can be introduced to it. These are technically called designations, I guess. Be sure to like and comment if you knew that, because I didn't. That being said, let's get started with the Monarchy. The Monarchy is one of the easier mechanics to learn. A card can make you become the Monarch like so, and there can only be one Monarch at a time. The benefit is simple. If you are the Monarch at your end step, you draw a card. This does happen before cleanup step, so if you draw a card that puts you over your max hand size, then you do have to discard. Monarchy can be stolen if another player's creatures do combat damage to the Monarch. This mechanic was introduced to encourage more combat, but ironically ended up promoting a lot of Pillow Fort-esque strategies. Now, I don't recommend throwing a random Monarchy card into a deck without a game plan. If you don't have evasive attackers to regain the Monarchy or a Pillow Fort plan to hold on to it, you'll often just be giving your opponents free advantage. That being said, I'll take a quick look at a couple of commanders that make great use of the Monarchy. First off, if you want to go for a more Pillow Fort style game plan, I would recommend Rad Counters, True Heir. He does initially give the Monarchy to someone else, meaning you either have to attack them in a future turn or play another effect that grants you the Monarchy, but once you have it, Rad becomes an excellent defender, preventing damage and even turning it into 1/1 counters. Throw a pariah on this dude and suddenly you can't take damage. A few more protection effects will lead to a near Pillow Fort lock. On the flip side of things, Obeka Splitter of Seconds is my pick for a more aggressive approach. In this deck, Monarchy cards with upkeep triggers are king. Normally, these effects are mid because holding on to the Monarchy for a whole turn can be challenging, and often if you have a strong Pillow Fort setup, there are way better value engines to be put together. However, here you'll be taking the Monarchy back with Obeka and then getting several upkeeps to get immediate value out of those cards. Toss in some evasion and some ways to buff Obeka's power, and you'll establish yourself as the threat real quick. Moving on, the initiative is next on our list, and this mechanic is similar to the Monarch. When you take the initiative for the first time, you enter a dungeon named the Undercity. There are other dungeons, but we'll get there. For now, you start in the top room and gain the effect and slowly work your way downward each time you take the initiative. Also like the Monarch, dealing combat damage to the current initiative holder has you take the initiative, either starting in the secret entrance if you haven't done so before, or going to the next room of your choice if you already have. Be careful which options you choose because as you go deeper, it will cut off future options later. For example, if you take the initiative and choose to enter the Forge, you will not be able to enter the Stash during this run through the Undercity dungeon. Speaking of this run, after you've completed the Undercity, you can start over from the beginning if you take the initiative again. Lastly, if you still control the initiative during your upkeep, you can go further into the Undercity. Obeka again would shine here, but we'll talk about some other choices for variety. Safana Kalimport Cutthroat being paired with Dungeon Delver is my personal pick for an initiative deck, since she grants you advantage in your instep for having the initiative. Dungeon Delver is a bit of a win more card, but at 2 mana and in the command zone, it more than makes up for what it's worth. That being said, this commander won't take the initiative on her own, so be sure to fill your deck with those effects to make sure your commander isn't just a sitting duck. Most of these effects are 4 mana, so it'll be easy to curve background on 2, commander on 3, and initiative on 4. Make sure to run plenty of evasion as well to reclaim the initiative if and when you lose it, and you should be golden. And if you already have the initiative on your turn, you can use those evasive attackers to swing into the subscribe button. It really helps, plus Brain Likes number go up, so help me out there. Okay, shameless shilling out of the way, the obvious transition from initiative is the rest of the dungeons. Told you we'd get back here. This one is not combat focused and cannot be stolen. Dungeons, besides the Undercity, can only be entered or advanced anytime you enter the dungeon. There are 4 dungeons to pick from, being Lost Mines of Fendelver, Tomb of Annihilation, and Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Lost Mines and Annihilation are kinda poo-poo stinky, but there's a lot of value in the other 2. Asarak the Archlich is my commander of choice for this archetype. Running cost reducers like Heartless Summoning, the Sipsig Ceremony, or Urza's Incubator will allow you to cast your commander over and over to grind value out of the dungeon, so long as you never choose to enter the Tomb of Annihilation. Carnival of Souls will combo this, basically letting you pay 1 life each time you want to venture into the dungeon. Demon's Horn will let you do this infinite times, as will Aetherflux Reservoir, which also enables a win condition. If Combo Storm isn't your cup of tea, don't include those pieces and instead try out value engines like Diregaff Colossus to make a token army or Araya, First of Lochthwain, to begin draining your opponents. Even if you have neither of these, you'll slowly fiend value from your dungeons. Whatever path you take, it's definitely a commander with some unique play patterns. Next, I want to give a quick mention to Ascend. It's way simpler than anything we've looked at so far, and probably will stay that way. But if you control a permanent with Ascend and 10 total permanents, you gain the city's blessing. You can't lose the city's blessing, it can't be stolen or gained in any other way, and all it does is enable the effects of cards that have Ascend. There's not really a commander for this since there's no direct legend support, but if you want to play a bunch of Ascend effects, I would recommend a commander that's good with Token Swarm to get the 10 threshold really quickly. I'll throw out Gyred, Mirror of the Wild, since he basically doubles your creature count. Moving on, we have Day-Night, which is a mechanic that is admittedly a little meh in my opinion. 99% of it revolves around werewolves, which are cool, but I don't know if they deserve their entire own designation mechanic. Anyway, if a daybound or nightbound creature is introduced to the game, it respectively becomes day or night. Then, if a player casts no spells on their turn, other people casting instants here doesn't count for this, it becomes night. And if a player casts 2 or more spells on their turn, not including other players, it becomes or stays day. This kinda sucks. Most of your cards want it to be one or the other, usually night, and it's way more often going to be day. I know it's the obvious choice, but Tovlar Dire Overlord is the only commander I can recommend around this mechanic since you have more direct control over the day-night cycle. Not really a lot to deck tech here, just play some ramp and some werewolves and you'll be fine. Do Rad Counters count for the list I'm doing? I don't know, but I'll mention them real quick. This is a mill and burn mechanic introduced in Fallout. If you have Rad Counters when it gets to your first main phase, you mill that many cards, then count how many non-lands you milled. You take damage equal to that number and remove that many Rad Counters. If you milled lands, nothing happens, and you keep those counters and try again next turn. This has some interesting effects with the new Water Crystal, which increases each instance of mill by 4. Now, multiple Rad Counters will be just one instance, but your opponents could potentially mill more non-lands than they have Rad Counters, and then remove all the Rad Counters and take more damage than they had Rad Counters. For example, if they had 2 Rad Counters while you had the Water Crystal out, they would mill 6 cards. If 5 of them were non-lands, they would remove all Rad Counters since it's less than 5, and then lose 5 life. The obvious Rad Counter commander is Mothman. There's a whole precon dedicated to it, and it was very beloved, so it won't be hard to find tech about him. That being said, I want to recommend Strong, the Brutish Thespian. He's a huge body with some built-in protection that wants to be dealt damage so you can mill yourself and heal. I can hear the WWE bells already. Let's get ready to gather! Okay, yeah, so you want to run some fight spells, obviously. Green was already good at removing artifacts and enchantments, and this is a great excuse to remove creatures in green. This would make for a very interesting control graveyard value deck. Toss in some rad synergies like Tato Farmer or Harold and Bob the First Newmans, and you have yourself quite a deck. Next up is The Ring. This one is more complicated to explain than it is in practice, so just stay with me here. Whenever a card says the ring tempts you, you choose a creature to become your ring bearer, and they get this first ability right here. Basically, if your creature's toughness is larger than its power, this makes it pretty much an invincible attacker in combat, but they still can't be chunked by tiny little 1/1s. There's probably something to say about decks that deal damage with toughness rather than power for super evasive swingers, but I'll let you brainstorm about that. When the ring tempts you for a second, third, or fourth time, you get the respective bonuses on your ring bearer, and you can swap or keep which creature is your ring bearer after every tempt. At level 2, you get some card selection on an attack trigger. At level 3, they get a more powerful version of Death Touch. And at 4th level, you get to deal additional damage to all your opponents as a damage trigger. Every time the ring tempts you after that, you can choose to switch your ring bearer or keep it the same, but there are no new benefits. And if your ring bearer gets removed, you'll need to get tempted again to assign a new ring bearer. Okay, for commanders here, I love Schmeagle, Helpful Guide. In addition to everything I just talked about, Schmeagle gets more benefits from ring tempts via ramp, courtesy of your opponents. Not only does Schmeagle have the power to tempt at end step if a creature under your control died, aristocrats anyone? But you can run a whole bunch of ring tempting cards that double as ramp. Now, stealing your opponent's lands and throwing everything in between in the graveyard might incur a little bit of salt, so be prepared to be public enemy number 1, even if the actual power level doesn't deserve it. I think it's fun to lean into this mindset and make it to where the power does deserve it. You can use Braid's Arisen Nightmare to throw your opponent's lands back into the graveyard in exchange for what will usually be some good card draw. But hey, if they want to throw their own lands away, more power to them. Does this count as mass land destruction? I don't know, you'll have to let me know in the comments below. Furthermore, this is a double whammy because you can use her to sack a creature before resolving Schmiegel's trigger to get a ring tempt out of it if you haven't done so already. Then, with all this ramp, throw out some big finishers like Rise of the Dark Realms to grab all the creatures you've unintentionally or intentionally put into graveyards and bring the game to a swift close. Alright, the last mechanic I want to go over today is start your engines! Or speed, you know. This came out in good old Aether Drift, so it's relatively new. This one is more comparable to Ascend since you can just set it and forget it, but the way you earn it is a bit different. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start from the beginning. When you play a permanent that has start your engines, then you gain 1 speed. And once per turn on each of your turns, if an opponent loses life, you increase your speed by 1 to a maximum of 4. This means you can make an opponent lose life in the first turn that you gain speed, and you can basically start with 2 speed. Then, over the course of the next 2 turns, you can make your way up to 4. Once you're at max speed, any permanents with Start Your Engines get access to their additional abilities. Samut, the Driving Force, would definitely be my pick for a speed commander. 3 colors gets her access to many speed cards, and she gives active bonuses to both creature and non-creature strategies. She may just be the perfect mid-range commander. I can't even talk about tech really because she's so versatile, she can do really anything. Okay, we all know that's a lie, so let's see what I got in my bag of tricks for you. We definitely want to be dropping speed way before Samut comes out, so early ways to do that will help. The Raceway lands are okay, but I don't know how many colorless utility lands you want to put in a 3-color deck. If these are the only ones, I guess that's fine, but I'm hesitant to put any more than that, depending on whether you want to proxy a crazy mana base or are operating on a budget. Point the Way will kick things off and eventually ramp later. Nesting Bot is a little better because it has a body to increase your speed once or twice. But Burnout Bastronaut is the real MVP of the 1-drops since it has Menace and later gets Double Strike to synergize well with Samut's buff. You'll probably want more than that, but I'll let you figure those out. Be sure to also throw in some evasive attackers and some burn to help your speed get full. After that, Zalortha, Strength Incarnate, turns Samut's +4/+0 into an effective +4/+4, buffing your defenses just as much as your offenses. Xenagos, God of Revels, will take Samut's buff and amplify it even further. Elena, Kessig Trapper, will turn Samut's buff into huge late-game ramp. With Samut out, Pirate's Pillage and Big Score will filter your cards and go mana positive with the treasure, and Unexpected Windfall and Seize the Spoils will go mana neutral for the same thing. Throw in some green power-based draw like Momentous Fall, Greater Good, Rishkar's Expertise, and Return of the Wildspeaker, and you'll always keep a full grip at a discounted price. Round that out with some protection and some early ramp to help speed up your game plan, and you have yourself a nasty and resilient mid-range deck. Alright, I know this was a long one, but that should cover everything, I think. If there are any more mechanics that you think fit into this category that I didn't mention, let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, you can go ahead and subscribe. Oh, and as always, have a good one.